The cry in the forest was dark, even though the sun still shone somewhere above. The tall trees grew close together, their branches twisted like claws. Strange lights moved between the leaves, glowing insects floating in silence. Every step felt heavy here, every sound echoed too long. The human explorer, Daniel, walked slowly. His boots pressed into the soft ground. The air was thick, filled with the smell of wet moss and something sharp, like metal. He had traveled far from his ship, deeper than he planned. Something pulled him forward, something unseen. Then it came. A sound at first he thought it was the wind. But the sound rose again, a cry. High, trembling, filled with fear. Not the cry of an animal. Not the cry of a human. Something else. Daniel stopped, his hand tightening around the small weapon at his side. He listened carefully. The cry came again, this time louder. A voice weak, desperate echoes between the trees. Help. Please. His heart beat faster. He had trained for danger, for wild beasts, for strange machines. But this voice. It was the voice of a child. He stepped forward, cautious. Each branch he moved aside made him feel watched. The forest seemed alive, not only with plants and insects, but with eyes hidden in the shadows. The cry came once more. My mom. My mom's foot hurts. Daniel froze. The words were broken, the accent strange, but clear enough. Whoever cried out knew some human language. That was impossible, wasn't it? He moved faster now, his boots sinking deeper in the mud. His breath grew heavy as he pushed through vines and roots. The sound guided him, pulling him deeper, like a rope tied around his chest. At last, he reached a clearing. There in the center stood a child. The child was small, no taller than Daniel's waist. Its skin glowed faintly in the shadows, pale blue like the light of the moon. Large black eyes filled its face, wet with tears. Its hair shimmered like silver threads, moving gently as if alive. Daniel's breath caught. An alien child, alone. Crying, the child turned sharply, its eyes locking onto his. For a moment, the forest seemed to stop breathing. The glowing insects froze in the air. Even the wind went silent. The child raised its tiny hands and cried louder. Human. Help, my mom. She is hurt. Daniel's mind raced. How did it know his kind? Why was it speaking his language? And where was the mother? He wanted to ask questions, but his voice stayed trapped in his throat. The child took a step closer. Its feet barely made a sound on the ground. She fell. She cannot move. Please. Daniel felt a chill crawl up his spine. Every part of his training told him to stay cautious. This could be a trap. Many explorers never return from forests like these. The cry of a child could be bait. The silence around them could hide hunters, but the tears in the child's eyes looked real. The shaking hands, the broken voice, it all felt real. Daniel lowered his weapon slightly. Where is she? He asked at last, his voice steady but low. The child pointed behind the trees, toward a darker path where the light did not reach. She is there, the child whispered. The trap has her. Please, come. Daniel looked into the shadows. A deep unease filled him, but also something else. Curiosity, fear, and a small spark of something he had not felt in a long time. Hope. Because, if the child was real, if the mother was real, then he was not alone on this strange world. He took a slow step toward the dark path. The child waited, wide-eyed, silent now. The forest groaned around them. Something unseen shifted in the distance. Daniel's grip tightened again on his weapon. He moved forward, following the child into the unknown, and the cry still echoed in his mind. The child appears they. Forest swallowed sound as Daniel followed the strange child. Every step into the darker path felt heavier. The air grew colder, and the tall trees leaned closer, their roots twisting like snakes across the ground. His boots slid on the damp soil, but the child moved lightly, almost floating. Daniel kept his weapon ready, though his hand shook slightly. He didn't trust this place. Nothing here was natural. The silence was too perfect, as if the forest itself was listening. The child looked back once, its big black eyes glowing faintly. "Hurry," it whispered. The voice was thin, like it might vanish if Daniel didn't catch it quickly. He swallowed hard. This was no ordinary alien. Its skin shimmered faintly, as if reflecting light that wasn't there. Its hair drifted around its head, silver strands moving without wind. The more Daniel looked, the less human it seemed, and yet, its tears, its shaking hands, the desperate way it called for help, all of that felt painfully real. They reached another clearing, smaller this time. The ground here was broken, split open by sharp rocks and roots. The smell of blood filled the air, sharp and bitter. Daniel's eyes narrowed, and then he saw her, the mother. She lay half on the ground, half trapped inside a brutal device made of black metal. The trap looked like jagged teeth from some machine beast, biting deep into her leg. Dark blue blood oozed from the wound, glowing faintly in the dim light. She struggled weakly, her long arms pulling at the metal. But every movement only cut deeper. Daniel froze. The alien mother was tall, taller than him, even while kneeling. Her skin was the same faint blue as the child's, but covered in strange markings that seemed alive, shifting slowly like waves. Her face was sharp, proud, and beautiful in a strange alien way. But her eyes, dark and furious, locked onto him the moment he stepped forward. She hissed. The sound was low, warning, animal-like. Her body tensed, as if ready to fight him even in her broken state. Daniel raised his free hand slowly, showing he meant no harm. "I'm not here to hurt you," he said quietly. The child ran forward before he could stop it. Mom, he will help." The mother grabbed the child with her long arm, pulling it close to her chest. Her eyes never left Daniel. Her voice was broken, but strong, human. She spat the word like poison. "Your kind made this trap. You did this." Daniel's heart pounded. "No," he said quickly. "It's not me. I don't even know what this thing is." She narrowed her eyes, blood dripping into the soil. Lies. The child clung to her, tears rolling down its glowing cheeks. "He came when I called. He is not like them." Daniel stepped closer, careful, slow. The trap was ugly, cruel, designed to hold and bleed its victim without killing too quickly. It didn't look human-made. The design was too strange, too savage. He shook his head. "I don't know who set this, but it wasn't me. If I wanted you dead, I wouldn't be standing here." The mother's chest rose and fell heavily. She was weak, but her glare burned with distrust. Daniel crouched near the trap, scanning it. The metal pulsed faintly, as if alive. He reached out, then stopped. The teeth shifted slightly, clicking together. He realized then it wasn't just a trap. It was calling something, signaling. The forest groaned around them. In the distance, something howled. Daniel's eyes shot to the child, then to the mother. He whispered, "Urgent. We don't have much time. This thing is attracting whoever said it. If you want to live, I need to get you out now." The child looked at its mother with wide eyes. "Please, let him try." The alien woman's gaze softened for the first time, just slightly. Her hand trembled as she touched the child's head. She gave the smallest nod. Daniel's heart raced. He slid his weapon back into its holster and reached for the strange metal. It was cold, too cold, biting into his skin. The edges shifted under his grip, resisting, fighting him. He clenched his jaw and pulled harder. The forest whispered again. The howls grew closer. Shadows moved between the trees. Daniel gritted his teeth. "Hold on," he muttered. "Just hold on." And the trap screamed with a sharp metallic shriek as it began to open. Asterisk. The savage trap. The trap screamed as Daniel forced the metal apart. The black teeth resisted, shaking in his hands. They felt alive, like a creature trying to bite back. Every second of struggle made the strange forest pulse with sound. The alien mother let out a cry of pain as the trap's jaws scraped against her wounded leg. Dark blue blood dripped faster, glowing softly on the rocks below. She gritted her teeth, refusing to scream again. Her eyes locked on Daniel with equal parts rage and fear. The child crouched near her, clutching her arm tightly. "Please, human. Please, help her." Its small voice cracked, filling the clearing with desperate echoes. Daniel's heart pounded. His muscles burned. The trap wasn't just metal, it was something else, something designed to fight back. As he pulled, he felt tiny spikes dig into his palms, drinking his blood drop by drop. He growled, forcing himself not to let go. Then, suddenly, the trap loosened. The black jaws shifted apart, opening just enough for the mother to drag her wounded leg free. She gasped, collapsing back against the child, her chest rising fast. Her leg was shredded, bone and muscle torn, blood running freely. Daniel stepped back, panting, his hands cut and bleeding from the strange spikes. He wiped his palms on his trousers, eyes never leaving the broken device. The trap didn't fall silent. Instead, its black surface rippled. Strange glowing lines crawled across it like veins. A faint hum spread into the air, rising higher with each passing second. Daniel's stomach dropped. He knew that sound. It was a beacon. A signal the mother knew it too. Her eyes widened, and she hissed through her teeth, "The hunters. They come." The child clung to her tighter eyes, filling with tears. No, no, not again. Daniel raised his weapon, his eyes scanning the tree line. Shadows moved between the trees. The forest had come alive. Branches creaked, leaves trembled, and the sound of heavy feet pressed into the soil. He whispered to himself, "They're already here." The alien mother struggled to rise, leaning heavily on her child. Her long fingers dug into the dirt as she tried to push herself upright. She refused to show weakness, even as her leg trembled beneath her weight. Daniel moved closer, his voice steady. "You can't walk like that." "Let me help." She shot him a glare, sharp as a blade. "Never trust human." He clenched his jaw, frustrated. "Then don't trust me. But trust the fact that they're coming, and you won't survive 1 minute if you can't move." The hum of the trap grew louder, piercing now, vibrating in their bones from the shadows. A low growl answered. The child whimpered. Hiding its face in her arms, Daniel's instincts screamed at him. He had no choice. He stepped forward, sliding one arm under the mother's shoulders, the other beneath her wounded leg. She hissed, weakly pushing at him, but she had no strength left. Her body was too heavy for the child alone. "You can fight me later," Daniel said through clenched teeth. "Right now, you either let me carry you, or you both die here." The forest exploded with sound. Branches snapped. The ground trembled. Shapes emerged from the tree stall, armored figures. Their bodies were covered in dark plates that shimmered like obsidian. Their eyes burned red in the gloom. In their clawed hands, weapons crackled with strange light. Hunters. The mother stiffened in Daniel's arms, her face twisted with fear and fury. The child gasped, pressing close to her chest. The hunters raised their weapons, their voices rumbling in a guttural, alien tongue. They pointed at Daniel, at the mother, at the child. Daniel's grip tightened on his weapon. His bloodied hands stung, but he ignored it. His breath came slow and steady. He had only seconds to act behind him. The trap let out a final scream and then shattered into dust. Its purpose fulfilled. The hunters stepped closer, forming a circle around them. Their red eyes glowed brighter. Daniel whispered to himself, almost a promise. Not today. And the clearing filled with the first flash of light from their weapons. Asterisk, first contact tension. The clearing burned with red light from the hunters' eyes. Their armored bodies glistened like stone, their weapons humming with deadly energy. They stood in a half circle, closing in on Daniel, the child, and the wounded mother. Daniel's grip tightened on his weapon. His heart raced, but his voice stayed calm. "Stay behind me," he whispered. The alien mother hissed. "Behind you? You are human. You are no shield for us." Her words cut deep, but Daniel didn't move. "You can hate me later. Right now, you'll die if you don't listen." The child pressed close to her, shaking, tears streaking its glowing cheeks. Its small voice trembled. "Please, Mom. Please don't fight him." The hunters stepped closer, their heavy feet cracking the earth. One lifted a long spear made of glowing metal and slammed it into the ground. The sound thundered across the clearing like a warning drum. Another raised a clawed hand and barked in a strange tongue deep and sharp. Filled with rage, Daniel didn't understand the words, but he understood the meaning. They were giving him a choice: leave the aliens to die, or die with them. The mother's breathing grew sharp. She glared at Daniel. "Go, human. Run. This is not your fight." Daniel's jaw tightened. He looked at the hunter's weapons, then at her bloodied leg, then at the child's terrified face. His voice was steady, low. "If I run, I'll never sleep again. Not while I know I left you both here." The mother stared at him, stunned for a moment. No human had ever spoken to her like that. Not with fire in their eyes, but the hunters did not wait. One stepped forward, weapon raised. Energy crackled, ready to strike. Daniel fired first. His weapon spat a sharp blue bolt, hitting the hunter square in the chest. The alien stumbled, growled, but didn't fall. The armor absorbed most of the blow. Still, the strike broke their formation for a heartbeat. The mother gasped as Daniel took position in front of her. His body, small compared to the towering hunters, looked almost fragile. Yet he didn't move back. The hunters roared, charging. Daniel shot again, forcing two to dodge. He ducked as a spear of glowing energy tore past his head and burned into a tree, making it burst into flame. He rolled, came up to one knee, and fired again. But his weapon was small, too weak, too slow. The mother saw this. Her eyes narrowed. She gripped the dirt, her long fingers glowing faintly. Strange marks on her skin began to shift faster. She whispered something in her language, a word that carried weight like thunder. The child looked at her, wide-eyed. "Mom," she pushed the child into Daniel's arms. "Protect him," she hissed. Daniel caught the child awkwardly, staring in disbelief. "What are you?" But before he could finish, the mother lifted her wounded leg and stood, trembling. Her body shook from the pain, but her eyes burned like fire. She raised her arms, and the markings on her skin glowed bright blue. The hunters paused, their weapons humming louder. They knew this power. They feared it. Daniel's breath caught. "What the hell?" The mother screamed, a sound that ripped through the trees. Blue energy exploded from her hands, a wave that blasted through the clearing. The hunters staggered back, their armor sparking, their red eyes dimming. Daniel shielded the child, holding him tight as the energy roared past. Leaves tore from branches. The ground shook when the light faded. Smoke hung in the air. The hunters were still standing, but they were shaken. Their circle had broken. The mother collapsed back onto the ground, her strength spent. Her body shook violently, her face pale. She gasped for air, sweat dripping down her glowing skin. Daniel knelt beside her, the child clinging to him. "You'll kill yourself if you keep that up," he said. She glared at him weakly, voice trembling. "Better to die free than live as prey." The hunters regrouped, growling, stepping forward again. Daniel raised his weapon once more, his voice low but firm. "Then let's make sure none of us die tonight." The child looked between them, hope flickering in its eyes. For the first time, the mother didn't argue. She only gave a small nod, silent but clear, and together, human and alien prepared to face the hunters. Asterisk. Breaking the trap, smoke drifted through the clearing, glowing faintly blue where the alien mother's energy had burned the air. The hunters snarled as they reformed their circle, armor plates clicking, weapons sparking with light. Daniel stood firm, weapon raised, his back close to the mother and the child. His eyes darted between the hunters and the broken trap lying in pieces near the rocks. The thing still pulsed faintly, its strange black shards twitching like dying insects. The mother coughed weakly. Her energy was gone, her body trembling with every breath. She tried to push herself up, but her leg collapsed beneath her. Blood seeped into the soil, glowing brighter in the dark. Daniel glanced at her, frustration boiling in his chest. She wouldn't last long like this. Even if they escaped the hunters, her wound would kill her. The child clung to her side, wide black eyes glistening with tears. "Mom, don't leave me, please." The sound cut through Daniel like a blade. He turned back to the trap shards. A thought burned in his mind. If this thing was built to catch her, maybe it can also help save her. The hunters advanced. One raised a spear of light, pointing directly at Daniel. Their guttural voices rumbled like thunder. Daniel spoke low, urgent. "Listen to me," he said to the mother. "That trap it had power. If I can twist it, maybe I can stop the bleeding." She hissed, her voice ragged. "It is poison. It drinks blood." "I know," Daniel snapped, "but right now, your blood is pouring out anyway. If I can turn it against itself, maybe it closes the wound instead of feeding on it." The mother stared at him, weak but burning with suspicion. Her lips parted to protest, but the child broke in, clutching her hand. "Mom, let him try." For a heartbeat, silence hung between them, broken only by the hunter's heavy steps. Then, with a trembling sigh, the mother gave the faintest nod. Daniel moved fast. He grabbed two jagged shards of the trap, ignoring the sharp sting as they sliced into his palms. The black metal writhed, alive, biting into his skin. He gritted his teeth and forced them together, twisting until sparks flew. The shards pulsed, a faint hum growing louder. Blue light spread between them, forming a strange glow. The mother gasped, her markings flickering as if responding to the light. Her wounds sizzled faintly, blood slowing. The shards drank, yes but, as Daniel pressed them over the torn flesh. The bleeding began to stop. The glow sealed part of the wound like fire closing a cut. The mother cried out in pain, her body arching. The child sobbed, clutching her arm, whispering, "Hold on, hold on." Daniel pressed harder, sweat dripping down his face. His hands burned from the metal's bite, but he didn't stop. Finally, with a hiss, the shards locked together, sealing the wound in a dark, ugly band. The bleeding slowed. The glowing blood no longer poured freely. The mother collapsed back, chest heaving, her eyes wide with shock. She looked at Daniel not with hatred now, but with something else. Confusion, maybe. Gratitude. But there was no time to speak. The hunters roared in fury. They had watched too long. Now they charge. Daniel spun, weapon up, firing quick bursts. One hunter dropped to a knee, sparks flying off its armor. Another ducked aside, rushing closer with claws raised. The child screamed, covering its ears. Daniel's voice was sharp, commanding, "Can you stand?" The mother clenched her teeth, testing her leg. Pain shot through her body, but the bleeding had slowed enough. She leaned on the stone for balance, eyes blazing. "I can move." Daniel nodded once. "Good. Then we're not dying here." The hunters closed in, weapons glowing brighter. The ground shook under their steps. Daniel shifted closer to her and the child, shoulders squared. Weapon aimed steady, and in that tense, burning moment, human and alien stood side by side, not as enemies. Not as prey, but as something new. The hunters howled, raising their weapons for the kill. And Daniel whispered, "Time to break more than just traps." The hunters arrived. The forest erupted with sound. The hunters charged, their heavy steps shaking the ground like thunder. Red lights blazed from their weapons, streaking across the clearing in sharp bursts. Trees cracked, dirt exploded, and the night itself seemed to shatter. Daniel pulled the child close, dragging him behind a fallen log. Blue sparks hissed as energy bolts scorched the wood. He ducked low, rolled, and fired back. His weapon spat weak flashes compared to the hunter's blazing power, but he aimed true. A bolt hit one in the shoulder, staggering it for a heartbeat. The mother leaned against a tree, her sealed wound glowing faintly. Her body shook, but her eyes burned. She lifted her long fingers and whispered in her alien tongue. The markings on her skin flickered alive, blue light flowing from her arms. The hunter saw it and roared in fury. They hated her power. Daniel noticed the glow. "If you've got strength left," he shouted, "now's the time to use it." She snarled, lifting her hand. A wave of energy burst forward, knocking two hunters off their feet. Their armor cracked with sparks, though they quickly scrambled back up. The child gasped, clapping tiny hands over its mouth. "Mom, you're still strong." The mother grimaced, sweat running down her face. "Not strong enough," she whispered. Her body trembled, violently. Use of power drained her more. The hunters closed in again, splitting apart to surround them. Their claws gleamed, their red eyes locked on prey. Daniel's weapon hummed weakly. The charge was almost empty. He cursed under his breath. Great. Outnumbered, outgunned, and out of luck. The child tugged at him suddenly. "There is a cave," it whispered urgently, pointing behind the clearing. A narrow crack in the rocks glowed faintly, hidden by vines. Daniel followed the gesture. He squinted. Yes, a way out. Not safety, but cover. He shouted to the mother, "We move now." She tried to step, but her leg buckled. Daniel rushed to her side, slinging her arm across his shoulders. She hissed in pain, but didn't resist this time. The child ran ahead, small feet silent on the dirt. The hunters roared when they saw movement. They charged, weapons blazing. Daniel fired blindly over his shoulder, forcing them to dodge. Energy blasts scorched trees, setting them aflame. Smoke rose, filling the clearing. The air grew thick with fire and ozone. "Faster!" Daniel shouted, dragging the mother toward the rocks. His muscles screamed, but he refused to stop. The child reached the vines first, slipping through the narrow crack. "Here. Hurry." Daniel shoved the mother forward. She squeezed through, her breath sharp with pain. Daniel dived after her just as a hunter's claw struck. Sparks flew as metal scraped the rock where his head had been a second earlier. Inside the cave, it was dark and cold. The walls glowed faintly with blue veins of crystal. The air was damp, echoing every breath. The mother collapsed against the wall, panting. The child curled at her side, hugging her tightly. Daniel leaned against the stone, chest heaving. Outside, the hunters howled, their roars echoing into the cave. The ground shook as they slammed against the rocks. Trying to break through, the mother looked at him, eyes glowing faintly in the dark. "Why?" she whispered, her voice almost broken. "Why risk your life for us?" Daniel wiped sweat and blood from his brow. His voice was steady, though his hands trembled. "Because leaving a child to cry for help. That's not who I am. Doesn't matter if you're human or not." The mother stared at him, silent, her expression unreadable. Outside, the hunters' growls grew louder. The cave walls cracked under the force of their strikes. Dust rained from the ceiling. The child whimpered, hiding in the mother's arms. Daniel lifted his weapon again, even though it was nearly drained. His voice was low, grim. "They're not stopping. So neither will we." The mother's markings flickered again, faint but still alive. She raised her trembling hand, readying what little strength she had left. And in the dark of the cave, human and alien waited side by side as the hunters tore through the world to reach them. Asterisk. The escape begins. The cave trembled with every strike from the hunters outside. Stones cracked, dust rained from the ceiling, and the narrow walls glowed faintly with stress. The child buried its face against the mother's chest, trembling. Daniel knew the walls wouldn't hold. The hunters were too strong. It was only a matter of time before they broke through. He turned quickly, scanning the cave. The blue crystals embedded in the stone pulsed with a soft light, forming a line deeper into the darkness. A path, maybe an escape. "We move," Daniel said sharply. The mother frowned, her breath ragged. "You wish to run into the unknown? It may be worse than hunters." Daniel snapped back. "Staying here isn't an option." He pointed at the cracking wall. "You hear that? They'll be through any second." The child tugged at its mother's arm. "Please, Mom, we have to go." The mother's jaw tightened. Pain burned in her eyes, but she nodded once. "Then lead, human. If you betray us, I will end you with my last breath." Daniel didn't argue. He slung her arm across his shoulders again, guiding her weight. The child ran just ahead, its silver hair shimmering faintly in the cave light. The path was narrow, forcing Daniel to duck low. Sharp crystals jutted from the walls, glowing brighter as they passed. Their faint hum echoed like whispers, making his skin crawl. Behind them, the hunters roared. The sound of stone breaking filled the cave. "Faster," Daniel urged. His boots splashed through shallow pools on the ground. Water dripped from the ceiling, cold against his face. The mother hissed in pain with every step, her wounded leg dragging. Still, she forced herself forward, refusing to fall. The child darted ahead, then suddenly stopped. "This way," it cried, pointing to a split in the rock where a thin beam of moonlight leaked through. Daniel squinted. The crack was narrow, but wide enough to squeeze through. He pushed the mother forward first. She pressed her body against the stone, groaning as she slipped into the opening. The child followed, sliding through easily. Daniel turned back for one last look. The hunters had broken into the cave. Their glowing eyes lit the darkness like fire. Their armored bodies crashed against the crystals, shattering them into shards of blue light. One hunter spotted Daniel and let out a guttural roar. Daniel dove into the crack, scrambling through the narrow tunnel as claws swiped behind him. Sparks flew as metal scraped against stone. He rolled out onto the forest floor, gasping for breath. The night air was sharp and cold. The forest stretched wide and endless, glowing faintly with alien light. The mother leaned against a tree, holding the child close. Her chest rose and fell heavily, her skin pale but her eyes fierce. Daniel staggered to his feet. "We need distance," he said. "Now?" The child pointed down a slope where glowing plants bent gently in the wind. "That way, toward the river. They cannot track us in water." Daniel nodded. Good move. They stumbled down the slope, branches whipping at their faces. The ground was soft, sinking under their boots. Strange animals cried in the distance, their calls sharp and haunting. Behind them, the hunters poured from the cave. Their roars echoed through the forest, shaking the trees. Red beams of light cut through the dark, searching. Daniel fired once over his shoulder, a weak bolt that barely slowed them. His weapon hummed low, almost empty. The mother whispered something in her tongue, clutching the child tighter. Her markings flickered faintly, but she was too weak to summon real power. The forest seemed to sense the chase. The glowing plants dimmed as they passed, as if hiding them. The insects went silent. Even the wind seemed to hush. They reached the river at last. Its surface shimmered with silver light, wide and fast. The current roared, carrying mist into the air. Daniel helped the mother down the bank. "We cross," he said firmly. The child nodded quickly. "Yes, yes." "They will lose our scent." The mother hesitated, her eyes narrow. "The water is dangerous. It has its own hunters." Daniel looked at the red lights glowing behind the trees. The hunters were close. Too close, he met her gaze. "Then we take our chances." The mother's jaw tightened. At last, she gave a sharp nod. Together, they stepped into the freezing water, the current pulling hard against them. The child clung to Daniel's arm. The mother leaned on his shoulder, teeth gritted. Behind them, the forest exploded with hunter roars, and the chase was far from over. Secrets revealed the river carried them far downstream before Daniel dared to stop. The current fought him the whole way, tugging at his arms, pulling at his legs. The cold cut through his bones, but he refused to let go of the mother or the child. At last, they reached a shallow bank where the water slowed. Daniel dragged them onto the mud, chest heaving, arms burning with pain. The child coughed and clung to his neck. The mother lay half in the water, gasping, her glowing markings dim and fading. Daniel rolled onto his back, staring at the alien sky above. Strange stars blinked, different from Earth's, sharp and scattered like shattered glass. For a moment, silence filled the world, broken only by the river's rush. Then the child spoke, voice small but urgent. "We cannot stay here. They will come." Daniel forced himself up. His body ached, but his mind stayed sharp. "Then we find cover." He looked around and spotted a hollow beneath a fallen tree. Its roots curled high, forming a crude shelter. There, he guided the mother and child inside. The space was tight, damp, but hidden. He crouched at the entrance, weapon ready, while the two settled against the wood. The mother's breath rattled. Her skin was pale, her wound sealed only by the ugly black band of trap metal Daniel had pressed against it. She closed her eyes, shivering. The child hugged her, whispering in their tongue. Then it looked at Daniel, eyes wide. "She will not last. Not unless she rests." Daniel glanced at the wound, then at the forest beyond. "Rest, then?" "I'll keep watch." For a while, no one spoke. Only the hum of insects and the distant cries of night creatures filled the air. Daniel scanned the shadows, but his thoughts drifted back to the mother's furious eyes. Her voice calling him human like a curse. Finally, she stirred. Her voice was weak, but clear. "You saved me." Twice now, Daniel kept his eyes on the forest. "Don't thank me yet. We're still being hunted." She shook her head faintly. "You do not understand. You should have left us. Your kind would have." Daniel turned to her, frowning. "What do you mean, my kind?" Her eyes opened, glowing faintly in the dark. "Humans came here long ago. Traders, explorers, thieves. They allied with the hunters. Gave them weapons. Gave them strength. And in return, the hunters gave them us." Daniel's stomach tightened. Us. Slaves. Experiments. Prey. Her voice trembled with rage, even in weakness. My people were free once. We ruled the forests, the skies. But the hunters came, and with them humans. Together, they broke us. Now we are scattered, hunted, driven like animals. The child pressed closer to her, whispering, "Not all humans, Mom. Not him." The mother's eyes flicked to Daniel, sharp and cold. "Perhaps not. But when I see your face, I see theirs. The ones who sold us. The ones who laughed while we bled." Daniel's throat felt tight. He had heard stories before, rumors of colonists gone rogue, of human outlaws joining alien wars. But he had never seen the scars they left behind. Now the proof sat before him, bleeding in the dark. "I'm not them," he said quietly. "I don't care what they did. I won't let you die here." The mother studied him in silence. At last, her gaze softened just a fraction. Strange words. For a human, the child smiled faintly, hope flickering in its eyes. But before Daniel could answer, the forest howled. The hunters were near. Their roars carried on the wind, closer than before. Red light flickered through the trees like fireflies from hell. Daniel tightened his grip on the weapon. His voice was steady, iron. "They've found us." The mother sat up weakly, her markings glowing again with stubborn fire. "Then we fight, not as prey, not as slaves." But together, Daniel met her gaze and nodded. Together, the child clutched both their hands. Small but fierce, and for the first time, human and alien weren't just survivors hiding in the dark. They were allies. Asterisk. The final confrontation, the night air, was heavy with smoke and fear. Daniel led the way, pushing through the thick brush, his weapon clutched tight in his bleeding hands. Behind him, the mother leaned on the child, her steps uneven but steady with sheer will. The hunter's roars thundered through the trees, closer with every heartbeat. The forest opened suddenly into a canyon edge. A deep chasm stretched wide before them, black and endless. The wind howled up from below, carrying mist and the faint glimmer of glowing stones far beneath. Daniel cursed under his breath. Dead end. The child whimpered, clutching the mother's arm. No way forward. The mother's face hardened. "Then we make our stand." Before Daniel could reply, the trees behind them exploded. Hunters burst through, their armor shining red in the moonlight. They spread out in a half circle, cutting off escape. Their claws clicked against their weapons, sparks hissing in the dark. Daniel raised his gun. The charge was nearly gone, but he aimed steady. "Stay behind me." The mother shook her head. She pushed the child toward Daniel. "Protect him. I will fight." Daniel's jaw tightened. Not alone. The hunters advanced slowly, savoring the moment. Their guttural language echoed, filled with cruel laughter. One slammed its spear into the ground, the sound shaking the canyon walls. The child trembled, but its voice rang clear. "We fight together." For a heartbeat, silence stretched between them all. Human, alien. Hunters, the canyon itself seemed to hold its breath. Then the battle began. The hunters charged. Red light flashed. Daniel fired the last of his weapons charge. The blast hit one hunter in the face, cracking its armor and sending it stumbling back. He tossed the empty gun aside and grabbed a broken branch from the ground, holding it like a spear. The mother screamed, her markings blazing bright. Blue energy exploded from her hands, slamming into two hunters and hurling them against the canyon wall. The effort nearly broke her, her body shaking violently. But she stood tall. The child darted between them, small and fast, hurling rocks with trembling hands. The stones struck the hunters' heads and faces. Not strong, but enough to distract them. Daniel roared as a hunter swung its glowing blade. He ducked low, driving the branch into its side. The wood shattered, but the force made the beast stumble. He grabbed the hunter's own weapon and pulled hard, twisting it free. The blade hummed with alien energy in his hands. He turned it back on the hunter, slashing across its chest. Sparks flew, and the creature fell with a guttural scream. The mother staggered, another wave of blue light bursting from her palms. It struck a hunter climbing close to the child, throwing it off balance. She fell to her knees, coughing blood, but still raised her hand again. Enough. Daniel shouted, blocking another strike. You'll kill yourself. The mother's voice was raw but fierce. Better to die standing than live hunted. A massive hunter, larger than the rest, stepped forward. Its armor glowed brighter, its weapon burning like fire. Its voice boomed in a roar that shook the canyon. The leader, Daniel's grip tightened on the stolen blade. Then let's finish this. The leader charged. The ground trembled. Daniel met it head-on, their blades clashing in a storm of sparks. The force nearly knocked him back, but he held firm. The mother, with her last strength, lifted both hands. Her body blazed with blue light. The markings spread across her skin like fire. She screamed, unleashing everything in one final blast. The energy struck the canyon wall above the hunters. Rock cracked. Stone shattered. With a thunderous roar, the cliffside collapsed. Dust and rubble rained down, burying the hunters in a storm of stone. Their screams echoed before the chasm swallowed them. Silence fell. Daniel dropped to one knee, chest heaving. The child clung to him, sobbing with relief. The mother lay collapsed on the ground, her body weak, her light fading. Her eyes flicked to Daniel, full of exhaustion, but also, "Respect, you fought." "Like one of us," she whispered. Daniel shook his head, gripping her hand. "No, I fought because it was the right thing." The canyon groaned, dust swirling in the moonlight. Far above, the faint hum of engines rumbled. More ships. More hunters. The child looked up, eyes wide with dread. They are coming again. Daniel clenched his jaw, rising to his feet, weapon humming faintly in his grip. The final battle wasn't over. It had only just begun. Asterisk Cope, or Doomed the Canyon, lay in ruins. Dust swirled in the moonlight, glowing faintly where the mother's energy still lingered. The hunters were buried beneath the collapsed cliffs, their red lights gone, their growls silenced. For the first time since the chase began, there was quiet. Daniel stood at the edge, a chest heaving, the stolen hunter blade heavy in his hand. The child clung to his side, eyes wet but shining with hope. The mother lay on the ground, pale and trembling, her breath shallow. Her markings flickered like dying embers. "We made it." The child whispered, voice trembling with relief. Daniel's eyes narrowed. "No. Listen." Above them, the night sky rumbled. Dark shapes moved across the stars. Engines hummed, deep and cold. More ships. Dozens of them. The child's face fell. No, not more. Daniel gritted his teeth. The hunters had not come alone. What they had faced was only a fraction of the force waiting above. The mother opened her eyes weakly. Her voice, thin but sharp. "They will burn this forest until nothing is left." "They always do." Daniel crouched beside her. "Then we move before they land." Her hand tightened weakly around his wrist. "No, you don't understand. There is nowhere to run. When the ships come, the ground dies. The rivers dry. The sky burns." The child began to sob, shaking against her chest. "Mom, what do we do? Where do we go?" For the first time since he landed on this strange world, Daniel felt truly powerless. His weapon was drained. His strength was fading. and the hunter ships above grew louder, closer, their lights cutting through the clouds. But then he looked at the mother, broken, bleeding, yet still alive. He looked at the child, small and terrified, yet still holding hope. And something inside him refused to give up. "There's always a way," he said. Firmly. The mother studied him with tired eyes. "You speak like a fool." Daniel smiled grimly. "Maybe, but fools don't quit." He turned to the child. "You know these forests better than I ever could. Is there a place, anywhere, where the ships cannot reach?" The child wiped its tears, thinking hard. Then its eyes lit faintly. "There is the Hollow Mountain. The old tunnels run deep, deeper than the hunters can dig. But it is far." Daniel nodded. "Then that's where we go." The mother shook her head. "I cannot walk that far. My leg." Daniel met her gaze. "Then I'll carry you." Her eyes widened, shocked. No one had ever spoken to her people like that, certainly not a human. Before she could answer, the first hunter ships broke through the clouds. Fire blazed from their engines, washing the canyon in red light. The ground shook as they prepared to land. Daniel stood, lifting the mother onto his back. She hissed at the pain, but didn't resist. The child grabbed his hand tightly. "Hold on," Daniel said, his voice ironed. "We're not done yet." The forest beyond the canyon stretched like a sea of shadows, glowing faintly with strange plants. The path to the Hollow Mountain was hidden somewhere within. Above, the ships circled, searching. The hunters would come again, stronger, angrier, more ruthless than before. But Daniel kept moving. One step at a time, through pain, through fear, through the weight of the alien mother on his back, and the child clinging at his side. The mother's voice, weak but fierce, whispered into his ear. "If you survive this, human, you will no longer be human. You will be one of us." Daniel didn't look back at the burning canyon. He only whispered, "Then let's survive." The ships descended, red light flooding the night, and the story of human and alien had only just begun. Asterisk.